Hey there friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today I want to rank all of the different enemy types in Helldivers 2 because I feel like there's some pretty interesting designs. A lot of the enemies feel unique and I've really been enjoying tackling each and every one of them in their own right. Plus, people have been giving me nothing but positive feedback on my tier list so far. So let me just jump right into it. This is in alphabetical order, and I will be ranking these based on how fun they are to fight, how challenging they are, and a couple different factors which I'll explain as I go over each one. First off, we have the Berserker. This is a solid enemy type. I like this one a bit. I do feel like it is terrifying when it's running at you with the chainsaw. The design is really cool. I just find overall there are some better options to fight, and this is one of my middle tier enemy types that I see. It's not one that I'm terrified of or that I hate seeing. It's also not one that I love seeing. And again, mostly this is B tier because the design is pretty cool. I love the chainsaw arm. Personally, it is a lot of fun. Now we are getting to the Bile Pure. If this was just how much I enjoy facing this, it'd be D tier. But I do find this one to be pretty interesting. As far as challenge rating, I feel like this belongs up there in the A tier. And the reason being, it can be insanely frustrating when you're running around the map and it's just spitting at you from way far away. Plus the fact that it will essentially one-shot you if you don't have a shield or anything. And yeah, they're terrifying. Plus, initially, when you're first starting off playing the game, this one is so frustrating to learn how to defeat it at first. Eventually, you learn it's pretty simple and they're not all that challenging if there's just one or two of them lingering around. But having them spit at you from long distance away is hilarious, and I really enjoy them. Now we're going to have the Bile Titan. This is my favorite enemy type in the game just because of the sheer size. I know they're not the most devastating thing. They're rather slow. They can definitely wipe a party if you're not careful. They're just so fun to tackle, and I just love having this giant enemy marching relentlessly at you. And yeah, overall, one of my favorite enemy types, probably my favorite one personally in the game. And I hope we get more giant type enemies like this, even though it would be pretty insane to see an automaton that is the size of a Bile Titan or something of that nature. I feel like that would be absolutely bananas. Now we're going to get to the Brood Commander. I don't like this one. It really is just part of the horde. It's going to be C tier. I do like the design. It looks pretty interesting, but overall there's nothing that really stands out about this one when it comes to facing them individually. The key to this is obviously this perk. It's got like a bunch of other Terminids around it to kind of swarm you essentially, so that's why it's going to go down in C tier. I just don't think that it is any kind of standout overall, especially for a commander unit. Now we're going to get to the Charger, and the Charger is hot and cold for me personally. I think it is a very frustrating when you have a bunch of them running at you. They're pretty easy to dodge once you understand how they work. They're pretty easy to defeat once you learn how to tackle them and you understand that they are coming for you. But I'm going to put this in B tier. Reason being is sometimes I feel like they are a bit of a cheat code for the Terminids, as you get several of them running at you at a time. They're pretty fast and it can just be overwhelming, and so that's why I'm going to put that there. As you get to higher tier difficulty levels, I feel like the Bile Titans are not the worst part about high rank missions for the Terminids. It is going to be the Spewers and the Chargers that really take on a big challenge at that point. Whereas the Bile Titans can be frustrating, but most of the time they're easier to target with stratagems and the like. Now we're going to get to the Kamar. These are right there in C tier. I think these are fine. They're base level enemies. Nothing too crazy about them. And I just think that they are easy to defeat. You can see them coming at you from a mile away. Nothing too crazy. They can swarm you if you're not careful, but very rarely have I ever died to one of these. I actually might put these down in D tier personally. Yeah, I'm going to drop them down. They're lower C tier, but I think there are other options that are just more fun to take on, and so these are just like your rank and file type enemies, nothing too crazy. Then we're going to get to the Devastator. I think, honestly, this is a worse version of the Berserker, in my opinion, just because I just love the way the Berserker runs around with the melee weapon, whereas the Devastator does not. So that's why it's going to go down a little bit for me. And again, I really like all the enemies that we face in this game overall. I think all of them are very interesting, but as far as ranking them against each other, this was going to drop down a little bit. Now we get to the dropship. This is going to be D tier. I don't even consider this an enemy. It's just essentially a ship that's dropping off a bunch of the automatons, and blowing them up is very satisfying, but that's about it. Otherwise, I'm not really worried about these at all. Whereas the Hulks are the opposite. I find Hulks to be my favorite automaton. Yes, they're frustrating. The Flamethrower Hulk is one of my favorite enemies in the game, just because it provides a lot of the things I'm looking for. It's terrifying, it's relentless, it's hard to kill unless you know exactly what you're doing, as well as being able to execute and hit its weak spots or get around to its back. I think the Hulk is phenomenal. Now imagine we fight something like that, the size of a Bile Titan, and now we're cooking. Maybe it doesn't have a flamethrower with that one, but yeah, the Hulk is absolutely insane. And one of my two favorite enemy types in the game overall, personally. I think they're awesome, and the design is really cool. Yeah, I'm just a big fan. Now we're going to get to the Scavenger. I think this is right here in C tier. It's fine. They're not that much of a problem overall, but I think they are fun to fight. I actually swapped these, so next up is going to be the Hunter. The Scavenger is just annoying because it can call forth other Terminates to fight you as well, but the Hunters secretly are one of the more devastating enemies in the game, in my opinion. And I'm going to put them at B tier. They are pretty easy to tackle, but when you have just a massive swarm of hunters all over you and just relentlessly tapping you with their little claws, it's just extremely annoying. And so while I do like fighting the bigger, massive enemies more, man, those hunters can be overwhelming for sure. Then we get the Scout Strider. I actually love these. I love the design. I love how easy it is to kill them once you understand how to do so and understanding how they work. The first time you shoot one of the actual automatons out of the walker, you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. It just works. And so very Star Wars in the design, very cool, and I like it quite a bit. One of my favorite enemies to fight, just because they can be frustrating if you have a bunch of them. They're easy to kill once you master the idea on how to destroy them, but they are still very, very fun to fight overall. Now we're going to get to the Stalkers, and these are... I'm going to talk about the Shriekers in a second as well, but the Stalkers are one of the most annoying to fight until you know that they only spawn with a nest, and then once you can go destroy that nest, you're in the clear. But the problem is, I don't feel like randoms know that often enough, so these Stalkers will be all over the place. They'll just keep spawning, and people will just keep fighting them, and relentlessly, because they go invisible. I think that's a very cool thing, like seeing them skitter off as they essentially disappear from sight. You can still see them, but it's pretty fascinating. It's just very telling on how much somebody has been playing on whether they immediately go tackle that Stalker nest or not. And so I think that's what separates this creature, is that, again, I like enemies that once you understand how to take care of them, they are not overly difficult unless you get a swarm of them. But if you make a mistake, if you don't go for the Stalker nest right away, if you let them continuously respawn, now all of a sudden they become a real problem. And that brings me to the Shrieker. These are the brand new flying type. I don't have a little token for them, but they're going to go there in A tier. They're the first real flying enemy that we have that actually stays in the air. So it definitely changes up the weapons that you have to use against them a little bit, just because they are mass numbers. Their hives that they have are very difficult to destroy. and they just swarm you if you're not careful. So I do like them, and it provides a different type of gameplay from the swarms of enemies on the ground that we've been seeing since launch of Helldivers 2. So I do find that to be really cool, and I'm glad they're adding additional enemy types in the game. Like I said, I'll put that right there in the A tier. Now we're going to go to the tank. I like the tank, but it's kind of basic overall. It can be frustrating to fight. I'm going to put it in B tier. It's fine. It's a enemy type that I don't think is bad or anything like that. It's just one of those that it's frustrating enough to get you annoyed if you are having to deal with a bunch of enemies and then the tank shows up as well. It's also one that, again, until you learn how to defeat it, can be a bit of a problem. But overall, this one doesn't stand out as far as design for me. So that's why it's going to go right there in the B tier. Then we've got the Trooper. This is going to go down here as well. Just basic. I do like the fact, though, that they can man the turrets in the automaton fortresses. I think that's a very nice touch. And I do like that quite a bit. I find that to be an interesting wrinkle into the gameplay because they're obviously tougher to defeat if they're behind those turrets. They have more firepower, and so it's a good touch. It's something that I hope they introduce more elements like that in the future of Helldivers 2. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the Warrior, which is going to be right here in C tier. Again, nothing too crazy. Obviously, it seems like I like the Terminids more because there's no D tier Terminids. Actually, this one might go D tier, to be honest, compared to the others. But the Warriors are fine. I just feel like the Hunters are much more of a problem. The Brood Commanders are better. Every other Terminid, the design is better. This is just your generic force, whereas I think this one is squishable, so that's why it's going to drop down just a little bit. But overall, that's going to be my tier list. Let me know what you guys think. Obviously, this is definitely a biased list based on what I enjoy fighting as well as the type of missions I normally tackle. But this is a fun one, so I hope you guys definitely check this tier list out and take it on for yourself. See what you guys have to say about where you would rank the different enemy types, and hopefully this changes as we get additional enemy types in the future as well. Anyway, my name is Jopa. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Helps me out tremendously, shows you want to see more Helldivers 2 content from me going forward. Have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.